And welcome back to Survivor 42 in 42. Just finished Survivor 20, Survivor the movie, Survivor Heroes versus Villains, all other names. Historically looked at as not only the greatest season of all time, but as a halfway point between the old school and the new school form of the game. And I'll say that watching the season again, I agree with all titles and all, references that are made to this season. I think that it very much holds up. I feel like this is one of the seasons where even the most dejected Survivor fan that loves to label all of the actual good seasons as overrated, they won't say that about this one, because I feel like at worst it's top 5, but at best it is the number 1 or 2. And I think because they got casting right. Now, whether we'll get to how some people were casted as they should have been heroes or villains, but casting, they got that right. They got the location right. They got a lot of the challenges right, even though a lot of the challenges are very uncomfortable to watch at certain points. I think that overall, it's just one of those seasons that you can sit down and watch after watching a few seasons and say, you know what? I love this show. And for me, that's how I felt for most of the day. This is I don't watch Heroes vs. Villains often because I like to have that feeling of, I'm doing something when I watch it. But on this go around, obviously I still enjoyed it. So for this, I had to have a very large panel of 4 folk. So for how they show up on my screen, we have Rose, Zoe, Jeremy, and Mac, but actually it's Mac and Jeremy. Thank you all so much for coming on to this. I told you all before we went live, this is the one that I've really been looking forward to. 1, because I love you all, but 2, because this is one of those seasons where I could shoot the shit about it forever, and I know that y'all are also very good talkers, and we can get a lot out of the way. Starting from the beginning, and this is, I'm going to kind of pick up where I left off last night with Samoa, where I say that Samoa is basically a prologue to Heroes versus Villains. You should always watch Samoa and Heroes versus Villains back to back if you want the whole cohesive story. And to me, it's an amazing story because we have to watch Russell lose twice. But you also understand the character going in. You understand his thinking going to the season because he just finished playing the season before. So we'll start with Rose. The first time you watched this season, which I believe is recently, what were your thoughts? Not knowing as much as a few of us on this panel know, what were your thoughts going into the season? Did you have thoughts on specific players? What did you think? What did you expect from it?
Like when I first watched this season, probably it had to have been just a few months ago. I can't remember the exact timing, but I remember, and this was actually the first full season of Survivor that I had ever seen, because Wifey randomly found it on Netflix somehow, and it's not available on most streaming platforms over here. So it was the first one I had ever seen. I vaguely remember when I was young seeing Johnny Fairplay lying about his grandma on TV, but beyond that, I had never really watched a full season, and so when I saw this one again, it was, I didn't quite get it at first, but just watching it for the first time, not even fully paying attention a lot of the time, like, playing on my phone. But I do remember on the first episode looking up and being like, the guy with the hat, he's something right now. And then seeing the first challenge and people are breaking things, limbs are being dislocated. That was
Break your shoulder, Courtney.
Yeah.
Break your shoulder.
When I first saw that, I said, "Wow, these people aren't playing around."
They're literally showing that challenge and the recap right now. Zoe, the first time you watched it compared to the most recent time you watched it, has the perception of the season changed? Or, how do you see the season, first of all, but then also, has the perception of the season changed throughout the years?
I don't think that my perception of the season has changed. And you say throughout the years, it's really been like 2 years. I was introduced to Survivor just pre-pandemic, had a lot of entertainment going into isolation and stuff like that. But I was told to wait on the season and watch the seasons that I needed to watch leading up to it. And so I had the full context of every player who had played except for Jerry Manthe, and went into it expecting a lot. And I received a lot immediately. Like, I was not at all shy expressing how much I loved this season immediately upon watching it, and how incredible it was to, like, I don't know, see these players not even necessarily in their prime, but in their greatest moments is really what I want to. Because JT, let's be honest, he's not in his prime. But his most memorable, I would say, is this season. Regardless of having won a prior season, I remember JT for his fuck-ups here. So,
and we will get to the fuck-ups, yes.
Even the very first vote, who, sorry if I'm going to spoil anything for anybody, is Sugar. Sugar showed her fucking tits in the first episode. Like, she full on, like, double, I'm sorry, but this is the best season of television of all time. And yes, I agree that you need the context of Samoa to be able to fully enjoy this season. But when you see it, there's no going back. You love Survivor. You feel joy in your heart and soul watching the season because it's just so fantastic.
Jeremy and Mac, going into the season, did y'all have favorites? Or were there people that you were rooting for from the very beginning? Were there people that you're rooting against from the very beginning? What were your expectations going into this? And do you feel like it paid off in the end?
For me, it's very different to a lot of other people because this is the first season I ever watched. I didn't know any of going into it. That's okay. And it's crazy because I've only watched it one time, and that was when it was airing when I was 10 years old. Which is it's crazy. Like, I have all this nostalgia. So I met these people through this season, and it's just amazing to watch.
I also met a lot of these players through this season. Like, my first season was Token Teens, and then I watched from like Token Teens to Samoa and then Heroes versus Villains. So I didn't know a lot of them coming in, but I knew some of their reputations. So, like, I'm a Cirie girl. When I first watched the season, I will say that I thought that Russell was funny, but on the rewatch, I fucking hated his guts, and he can die in a hole. Yeah, I think it was worth the payoff because it's such, like Zoe said, it's such an incredible season, and like, the players are there to play. They know they're playing for $1 million, but they're also all playing to prove that they are like incredible Survivor players, and they really showed that. And I feel like the editing also gave us a lot to see of that, which was good for me to watch because I like the strategy shit.
And I'll say that throughout these first 20 days of doing this, two of the main storylines that I've had through the previous 19 episodes is, one, seasons overcoming potential negative things that might bring it down, such as the exile twist in Pearl Islands, or the misogyny in Amazon, or things like that, where it's like you can kind of look past it if it's a good enough season. And I feel like in this season, unlike Samoa, where it's like, oh man, this person is clearly hijacking the show, in this season, you can kind of look past the fact that, you know, this person is getting all of these confessionals because you care about 19 other people, and you care about, like, you know, the challenges that are happening, the strategy that's happening. It doesn't feel like it's being played by Russell. And so, and number two, the other storyline is the fact that, you know, I forgot myself.
My favorite storyline of the season is Parvati fucking up Russell every time.
Yes. Well, so we will get to that one. So we'll just start from the beginning. This is something that we haven't done so much throughout the first 19 episodes of actually just going play by play, but with this season, you kind of have to.
You need to, because everything around is iconic.
Besides Survivor Gabon, this is my favorite credits, like Survivor, opening theme. This is my favorite one, but that's just a little side note. Everyone shows up in helicopters. You're getting everyone's little stories and everything. They arrive. Jeff asks them, "Oh, yes, you think you're a hero, you're a villain." And what always stands out to me, and especially watching it like how I've been watching it this time, is the fact that there are two very clear people that should be on the opposite tribes. And that's Danielle on the villains and Candace on the heroes. Candace, the flipper, the traditional flipper, she flips a few times on this season as well, against Danielle, who I feel like the only reason that Survivor saw Danielle as a villain is because she voted out Terry at 3 in Panama. And it's like, sorry, we don't want the Great White Hope winning another season. So we have Danielle on the villains, we have Candace on the heroes, and it always throws me off. Now, when I did the Micronesia episode, John Buckley filled me in on, and I went and looked it up, and it seems to be true, that Candace was initially supposed to be on Fans vs. Favorites. She was in med school, she couldn't do it, so they cast Parvati, and we get the story of Parvati then. Having said that, I still don't think Candace should be on the heroes, especially how she performs this season with once again flipping, but that's just me. We get to the first challenge, which is my favorite first challenge in the history of the show. For the people that watched it more recently, and were introduced to the show, and we'll start with Zoe first this time. What did you think of I want to call it the sandbag challenge, but that challenge? What did you think of it?
I personally love a physical challenge, and I feel like in current seasons we're lacking those, and just the physical aggression and like man on man, like you're really digging into the sand on it. This is one of my favorite challenges. It gives the opportunity for Sandra to pull off Sugar's top, like the shoulder dislocation, the broken toe, like it's fucking brutal, and yet like I literally enjoy every second of it. Like it is, you watch Stephanie get her shoulder pop back into its socket, and I'm living for it because there is so much raw aggression and there is so much like to live up to. These people have made a name for themselves for the most part, like in this season, and they want to live up to it and they want to win. And so to be able to see them at their like rawest point, like the fact that this is the first challenge, a physical showdown of brute strength, is insane. And that the personalities that come out during this challenge, and I mentioned it before, like Sugar fully like tits out, middle fingers up, in full, with a bag, at the end. It's inspiring, and she gets voted out first. To know that
that is a great word to use in that situation, because it is kind of inspiring.
She's inspired, like, and she gets voted out because she's kind of a little freak in the beginning, and she's like snuggling up to Colby, and he's like, yeah. Oh, no, I don't want that. But the fact that she made the biggest impact on me in the first episode and was the first to go, and that was still the right choice, is crazy, incredible.
Rose?
I'd forgotten about the topless part, but which you wouldn't think I would forget that.
Yeah.
But,
you're a married woman, so it's fine.
Yeah. But like no, I agree. Like having this be the first challenge of this game that I had actually paid attention to, one that I like, basically an introduction to this show and this franchise. Like, to see this be the first challenge, I was like, are they all like this? Do all seasons start with things breaking and tops flying everywhere and everything? But that was a badass moment, the topless thing with middle fingers raised, no fucks given. I really enjoyed that. So it did really raise my expectations for the rest of the season. Like, it really did say, okay, so all right, so they're this brutal in the very first challenge, this is the theme of the season. So I was looking forward to it. Really made me look forward to the rest of it. Definitely.
Yes. And that's something that this season, besides maybe Pearl Islands, did very well as far as like, we're just going to start and just throw you in the shit, and that's it. So this is one of the many reasons that I like to say this is Survivor the movie, because they don't beat around the bush. It's like, we're throwing you right into the game. We're going to make it an overly physical challenge. We're going to have all of your favorites on screen beating the shit out of each other for your amusement and their own, probably. We have the sugar moment. We have Coach dragging Colby. We have Cirie basically taking Parvati's head off at one point, which for everyone that says that Cirie is not a physical player, screw you, because when thrown in the right situation, Cirie does very well.
For the record, I think that Cirie should not have been on the Heroes tribe. That bitch is number one villain in my book. Like, Queen literally would kill for her.
Yeah.
But like, Hero, I don't think so.
If we rewind for just a second, when Jeff asks who doesn't think they should be on the villains or heroes, and Parvati, Sandra, Coach, just the three of them raise their hands. And it's funny because the reason that Jeff says Parvati is a villain is the same reason, that like he could have used that for Amanda and Cirie, because they were all part of the same alliance in Micronesia. Mm-hmm. But, that's why I think the theme is very subjective, but I think for the most part they got it right based off of what we've seen. But Jeremy and Mac, it sucks because I tried to avoid bringing this person up as much as possible, but it is what it is. One of Russell's first confessions is, I'm going to play the same way that I did before. And my question to y'all is, knowing what we know now and knowing what he probably assumed then, do you think that was the wrong idea to go into the game with? Or, and to give him credit, he still ended up getting to the end. So it's not like him playing the same way didn't pay dividends, because he still got to the same spot that he did last time. But do you think that an adjustment should have been made at some point to potentially, we'll get to the actual end of the game later, but to potentially not come off as a dick, for the most part?
I mean, let's call a spade a spade. He's a fucking asshole. And like, he has no awareness of like other people. And I feel like there's an important distinction between like people that are good at Survivor versus people that are good at like managing people. And I feel like he just doesn't see that part of the game at all. He prefers to just like bulldoze and get his way, which works to get you to the end, but no jury is going to respect you enough to hand you a win after you just treated them all like shit and dumped them in the trash. So like, I get it, it got him there, but like he's not learning from his mistakes.
I feel like Russell is like the villain who I would describe as like the big bad wolf, and to where he's like fiery and he's himself in the confessionals, and he's just like not necessarily rootable, but like pretty good TV. I mean, yeah, here's some fun moments. He has a lot of chemistry, even if it's water and oil chemistry with the other castaways. I think he's a lot of fun.
Drugs.
Not winner.
Keep on going.
not necessarily a winning villain per se, but one to definitely just like laugh at.
No, and I agree. And I feel like that's proven by the fact that he wins America's Favorite 2 seasons in a row. I wouldn't have voted for him in that situation, but I understand that a large majority of the audience do feel drawn to this person, whether they like him or not. He makes great television, like you just said. And I will never sit here and say that, one, that he doesn't make great television, because he does, and 2, that he's not a good player. I honestly think that Russell Hantz is a good to great player. That's not. I will never sit here and say that's not true. All biases aside. I will say that, and it's brought up during the reunion, and we'll get to it later on when we get to that final. It's just the perception that, you know, he doesn't admit that sometimes it takes a little bit of luck to get the end. You could be the greatest player ever. It still takes some amount of luck to get to the end. You can't just get there based off of you alone, because there are so many other factors that play into it. You could end up on the wrong tribe. You could end up on the wrong swap tribe. You could lose a challenge that you might have won on a different season. A lot of things can happen. But him sitting there saying there's no luck at all, it's like, well, that's just clearly not true. Scientifically, it can't be true. But then things like he doesn't, you know, at the reunion where he says, sacrifice the social game. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I've never played the game, all of that. In order for me, I care about social, strategic, physical. So I feel like the one part of the game that you potentially might want to sacrifice is the physical aspect. And even then, there's a point in the game where you still have to be at least decent at it, and that's usually like the tribal stage. Be decent at the physical aspect, and then, you know, you can basically just bury your physical game with the merge for all you want. But to say that the social game doesn't matter, and appealing to the jury doesn't matter, that's just wrong. I know that everyone has their idea of how to win the game. Really, all Survivor is about, and to a different degree, Big Brother is all about, is getting to the end. And as long as you can talk, and as long as you can appeal to whatever the jury is looking for, you have a chance at winning the game. And I know I said this yesterday, and someone else has been on the pod and said the same thing. He's one of those players that I don't see winning any season ever, because he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that in his head. So we'll go back to Jeremy Mack for this one. Do you think, just based off of the 3 times that we've seen play in America and the 1 time we've seen him play in Australia, do you think that there are things there that could potentially win him a game?
If he learns how to not be a dickhole, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's only so much empathy that a person has in their person, and I don't think that he has that much. So I don't see him being able to do anything with it, because he's still going to be treating people the same way.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that he would have to have an extremely objective jury. In fact, I think that the jury would have to be orgers, like a jury of people who have played,
of sociopaths, as I call you guys in my
of people who had played so many times that they are immune to the feelings that orgs give them, or at least semi-immune, to be able to look at his game, see the absolutely god-awful social game that he's played, and say, actually, he's genius, and we should award him this title of Sole Survivor. Because ultimately, at the end, people vote with their hearts. They vote for their alliances, or they vote for people who've played the best combination of all 3 games. And I just don't see an entire jury or majority's worth of jury at any point saying, I think that Russell deserves this $1 million because he's played the best game, even though he probably objectively did. Like, he controlled the game from top to bottom. And Andrew, you said, like, you kind of wanted to go without mentioning his game, but I feel like it would be a disservice to the season without mentioning him and how big of a part he was, because a good season needs a good antagonist, somebody to root against. And if even the audience is rooting against him in its entirety, essentially, like, I don't know, does the villain deserve to win at a certain point?
Sometimes yes. No, yes, sometimes yes. I could name villains that I think deserve. What does deserve even mean? But that one that I felt like, yeah, I get why they won.
Yeah.
If he had won, it would have been like, okay. Rose.
Yes, just to kind of continue that thought, like I just finished an org a few days ago. Like we had our final tribal council just a few days ago, and going into it, there was one person who was the season villain. She, she lied, she backstabbed, she even hurt some people. Like it was really rough, and so we were going in as the jury. We were going in thinking she has zero chance to win. No one's going to vote for her, but like uh, there was talk in the jury of her even being emotionally abusive and things like that. Like it was pretty intense. But when we went into final tribal council, like she hit all the buttons of the things that the jury wanted her to do. She acknowledged that she was ruthless. She acknowledged that she made some potentially hurtful plays. She apologized. She looked at the people in the face and said, "I'm sorry for what I did. I was doing this for my game. I didn't mean to hurt you." And people like that actually turned the jury around, and she ended up winning. Like she ended up getting our votes and winning because she had the most to prove to the jury, and she did it in our minds. And the other front runner, he didn't do that. He wasn't a villain. He was an under the radar player. If he had done his final tribal council correctly, he potentially could have won as well. But the fact that the villain, who had 0 votes at the beginning, she was able to do that and turn it around and come through with the win. Like I feel like that could have been Russell. Like there was one of the jurors even asked him directly, "Do you regret anything, for your gameplay?" And he was adamant that he did not. And the thing is, if he had turned around and acknowledged maybe there were some things I could have done differently, maybe that could have won the jury over. But the fact that he didn't, and the fact that he stuck to his guns, I think that definitely sealed his fate with the jury. Like if you read the room.
Read the room.
Read the room.
And it's unfortunate because you have your Redditors and you have your overly strategic Survivor fans that say, "Oh, he was robbed 2 seasons in a row." It's like, well, not really. I appreciate the strategic game. I appreciate everything that he did, and I appreciate when other people do that. The difference between Russell and Tony, and I said this yesterday with Samoa, is the fact that I feel like Tony, when he plays in Cagayan, Tony can read the room. Tony knows all I have to do is say these things, come off more likable. I feel like Tony is a very underrated social player, especially in Winners at War. I feel like Tony perfected the Russell game, where he saw the flaw, and whether Tony actually saw Russell seasons or not, whatever. But he saw the flaw and said, "You know what? Let's change this one thing. I'm still going to play the exact same way. I'm going to play very cutthroat. I'm going to backstab. I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to lie. But at the end of the day, I know how to talk to a jury, and I know how to make bonds with people where they feel like I'm not bullshitting them for the most part when I say that I actually am bonding with you." And like I said, I feel like that's the better example of that is in Winners at War. But I feel like that's something that Russell didn't grasp in the 2 seasons that he played back to back. I do feel like when he came back for Redemption Island, he probably understood that, but he just had no chance because they were going to vote his ass out no matter what the first time they got a chance to do it. But enough about that. We're going to talk a lot about him as we get further into the episode. This is just kind of a note that I have that has nothing to do with anything else. I love Tyson and Courtney coming to the season. The fact that they were invisible kind of annoyed me because they give great confessionals. They're 2 of the more funny players that I've ever played. So the fact that they were, kind of thrown on the back burner for Russell and Coach and Boss and Rob sucks. But Courtney's commentary through a lot of the challenges and her facial expressions during her stint on the jury definitely makes up for it. We don't even get that for Tyson because he doesn't make the jury. But we'll get to the Tyson thing. The Heroes Tribe. Before we talk about anything the Heroes Tribe did at the merge, let's talk pre-merge and their embarrassments there. And that it's not even losing the challenges, because sometimes people just lose challenges. It happens. Where my qualms with the Heroes Tribe comes from is basically after the sugar vote, they're voting based off of these alliances that they have, which probably won't help their tribe succeed long term during the pre-merge. Stephanie, whether you like Stephanie or not, is a great challenge person. They get rid of her ass second. They idle out Cirie. That's fine. You know, Cirie is as a strategic threat. I do understand getting rid of Cirie in that moment. I get it. I am a Cirie fan. I wanted her to win, all that, but I get getting rid of her. The problem is when it comes down to Tom and James. James, who had fucked up his knee, and in his 2 seasons beforehand had won 0 individual immunities. 0. He had won 0 individual, and Tom had won 5, I'm pretty sure, in Palau. And they decide to keep the tribe strong. We're going to vote out Tom and keep James. And from there, I feel like Tom and James wouldn't have allowed JT to do what he inevitably did. But besides that, I feel like they're it's like when an athlete goes on does a press conference and they say what the media expects them to say instead of saying how they actually feel. I feel like they had gone up there and said, you know what? We're not trying to keep the tribe strong. We're just trying to stick with our people, and that's it. The end. I would have had more respect. And Rupert did actually say that, and Jeff tore him a new one. So, but Jeremy and Mac, if you're playing on this Heroes Tribe and you see, the trajectory that you could potentially be going on if you continue to lose, do you keep your people because you're in an alliance with them, or do you remove those people to keep people that potentially win challenges with?
God, fuck no. We need to win challenges. I'm sorry, you can have all the alliances you want, but if you get down to 5 people left on your tribe and then you 5 go to tribal, one of you is going home. Sorry, but that's the T. So you need to win tribal immunities. So I'll slit some throats in the pre-jury. I ain't scared. They're not coming back to bite me.
They can't. Yeah, they can't screw
They can't
you
do
over.
anything to me. They're not on the jury. I'm sorry.
Rose. Oh, Mac and then Rose. Sorry, Mac.
I mean, no, I'm the exact same. You can, if you're a good social player, you're able to, make a couple sacrifices in the pre-merge, but at the merge, that's when you should be hitting the ground running with your social game, forming those bonds quickly.
That's where you need
gel
people.
with. Yeah, exactly. Think about keeping the tribe strong while also being in a good position, but also it doesn't have, you don't have to be the tippy top at all times, especially in pre-merge.
Rose.
So, yeah.
No, I definitely agree, and that's part of why the villains kind of dominated the entire pre-merge and then lots of the merge is because they had the numbers and they kept winning. That's so the Heroes they started merge with 5 people, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they started the merge with 5 people, and
It was 5-5, I believe.
5-5. Okay. Oh, right. Because the villains started turning on each other.
Yes.
That's right. So imagine if the villains had stayed strong with each other and then made it to merge without losing as many people as they did. That's they pretty much steamroll everyone to the end, and they still did even after turning on each other. So yeah, I definitely think the Heroes made a lot of dumb decisions, and we'll get to the dumbest ones, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that one.
Yes, but in pre-merge, yeah, you need to start winning. You need to have a strong team to at least make sure you have numbers during the merge. And I guess I don't know if they were just too blind to see that, or they just thought if I stick with my alliance, then I'll have the numbers for me. Maybe that was the
yeah, and I
mindset.
actually I don't know how that made me remember the second point that I was trying to make about
Earlier.
25 minutes ago. With this season, more than All Stars, because this is the first real All Star season that we've had since All Stars. I feel like most of these people understood, as the kids say, the assignment. Well, and in All Stars, these people are sitting here thinking, "Oh, we're all friends. We're all going to go in. We're going to have a good time, and our friends will help us do this, that, and the other because we're all friends outside the game." And then they start getting their feelings hurt when they start turning on each other. In this season, I feel like, yes, once again, a lot of these people are friends in real life, and I don't feel like, at least the way that it's portrayed on the show, it doesn't come off as these people are overly pissed off at each other. They're just all pissed off at Russell. No, but it doesn't come off as they're all pissed off. It's not like they're trying to utilize these outside the game friendships the entire time. If anything, they're trying to utilize these arbitrary heroes and villains bonds they've made to get them further in the game. So that was my point that I was trying to make 25 minutes ago when I forgot, when I had a brain fart. Zoe, there are a few moments in this season where I say, yes, this is definitely Survivor the movie. Just because of the way that certain things are shot, some of the way that things are portrayed. One of my favorite moments is Rob's little fainting moment that he has in the woods where it's getting the best of him or whatever the fuck. But my favorite cinematic moment is right after the villain's first tribal council, where Sandra calls Coach out on his bullshit, and Coach cries to Tyson and says, "Why don't people take me seriously? Why don't people like me?" And Tyson's like, "You got to stop telling your stories. Stop wearing feathers in your hair. This, that, and the other." Saying all of that, two questions for you. One, what tribe did you find yourself actually rooting for in this season? But two, did you feel like, specifically watching this season, as if you were watching the culmination, I guess, of once you went back and watched other seasons, did you feel like you were watching the culmination of 10 years of Survivor? Was this like if they had ended the show here, did you feel like it would have been a great point to end it?
I mean, I don't feel prepared to answer that question because I want more Survivor seasons for the rest of my life. Like, if it ends, I'll have to die.
Or at least until you're casted, right?
But that being said, like, just to talk about that Coach moment, like, I don't know how old he is in that season.
I'm tired.
Maybe I'm gonna call him 38. But like, did it really take him 38 years to realize that people think that he's off? Like, to be like, why don't they like me? I don't understand. Like, the fact that he is so unaware of himself up until that point when he's crying at Tyson and he's like, "Oh my God, like, what's wrong with me?" And Tyson's like, "You have to stop like doing your Tai Chi and you're telling your little stories and calling yourself the Dragon Slayer or whatever." Like, I'm astonished that nobody ever in his life was like, "Dude, you're a little freak, kinda."
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
Also, he watched his season, did he not?
Yes,
he was not on Smola, so he knew what he did in his season. So, like, are you not?
In his original season, when he's like telling his like raft story in like South America or whatever, and he gets kidnapped or whatever that story
And
ends up
beaten by
being.
little people with clubs and
Yeah. And everybody is dead fucking silent. Like, they're all sitting there like, what do I even say? Like, and he watched that and he wasn't like, that was weird of me to talk about. Or like, maybe I exaggerated that story even a little bit. Like, it's very strange. But I guess
He's just a weird person.
is this the culmination of 10 years worth of seasons? Like, yeah, kind of. Like, there's a lot of emotions in this season that you don't necessarily get. Like, sure, I feel like you get like a lot of anger out of Gabon and like Samoa and Micronesia is a lot of adrenaline, but you get almost all of those things in this season of the happiness, the shock, the adrenaline, the fear, the sadness, like literally all of it. And so I do believe that it is the culmination of all of those years worth of incredible television for the most part.
Yeah.
Coming together with all your favorite characters or whatever to truly tell this story of like what Survivor is about. And like, yeah, it's about this like insane strategy from Russell's side, and it's about the emotional manipulation from Sandra, and it's about the flirtiness and the physical aspect, and like the Colbys fall from grace, and
we'll get to the Colbys fall from grace.
Like there's so many different aspects of this season, and the joy, like, and personally, I love Tyson. I think that he's a great player. He's a great person. I like watching him play. But when Tyson gets...
When he votes himself out?
Yeah, when Tyson votes himself out, essentially, I was crying, screaming, laughing. Like, I've never felt so many emotions in my life.
I cackled.
Yeah, and going based off of that, and we could talk all day about bad season, good seasons as far as the first 20 seasons. My opinion, there's only been one shit Survivor season between 1 and 20, and that was Thailand. All Stars is close, but Emily, my co-host, would hate me forever if I actually said that, so it's fine. But I think this season was more of the characters that we get come back. If they had just done All Stars 2, it would have been probably better than the Heroes versus Villains, arbitrary Candace is a hero and a villain type thing. Because I do feel like these were the characters that we wanted back, plus Sugar and Randy. And that is, I sat on here 2 days ago and said that I have a newfound appreciation for Gabon, because I do. Having said that, I also said there still probably shouldn't have been anyone that came back from Gabon because no one knew what they were doing there. But I probably picked two of the better ones that came back from there. All of that is to say, and this is a shit segue, I feel like people in their heads, they make these legends out of these players, and sometimes it's fair, sometimes it's not. I feel like with James, I feel like it's not, because I don't think that James is a good player in almost all three aspects of the game. I think that he's a very overrated player. One, strategically, he kind of just tells people to shut the fuck up if they try to do anything else other than sowing the party line. Socially, he talks to his people and he shuns anyone that's not a part of his alliance. Physically, yes, he does amazing at tribal challenges, and not even in this season because his tribe loses a lot of the tribal challenges.
Unless it's a mental challenge.
Yeah. Sudoku. Oh, no, not Sudoku. The one in China.
The fucking blocks.
But James has played 3 seasons and has never won an individual immunity, and Courtney has won 1. So I feel like a lot of, for better or worse, a lot of this cast that were people that production perceived as the best or their favorites or whatever the case is. And that's why actually by the end of these 42 days, I feel like Cambodia will be my favorite season. And I think what will eventually put Cambodia over this is the fact that the fans were able to pick their people. And yes, I was pissed off that they didn't pick T-Bird, and I was picked off they didn't pick Shane or whatever. But the fans were the ones that ultimately decided the cast, as compared to this one where it's still production saying, oh, well, this person in our heads is a better villain. Danielle's a better villain than Natalie Bolton from Micronesia, which is just insane to me, but they go that route. So I feel like they're trying to still stay on this James train of, look how big he is. It must mean that he's one of the most dominant players ever. And it's like, well, he's actually not, because in China, he's in a big alliance and has 2 immunity idols and gets his ass sent packing without ever thinking he could go home. And Micronesia will give him a pass because he was medevac, but even then, Parvati and Cirie and all the rest of the girls played his ass. And this one, he's not the best social player when it comes to Colby, Stephanie, and Tom. He's a dick to them from what we are seeing. If it came out that, they were actually dicks to him, fine, whatever. From what we're seeing, James is not strategically, physically, or socially sound when it comes to the show. And it sucks, but also as a person that looks like James, melanin-wise, it sucks that I can't root for him watching it in 2022 eyes, but also I understand these James is overrated people that sit on Survivor Reddit. I actually get that.
I mean, listen,
Yeah.
I'll tell you why James was a hero.
Okay.
It's because he's really sexy.
Sure.
I'm just gonna say it.
Sure.
He's so fucking hot, and he's got like this alpha personality.
So most of the women on the villain shy, but
Listen, yeah, I'm not arguing that at all. But there's a reason I feel like that he was put on, and it's because he's got a very assertive presence. Like, despite the fact that he wants to say that he's like, oh, I'm just a midnight grave digger, and I, whatever, and he, yes, that's correct. If you see that man, you're like, yes, that man will beat me in a physical competition. But you also, you don't really consider the fact that, like, people that are muscular like that don't actually have, like, the strength. It's a lot of show regarding what they can actually do. So James is really, really beautiful eye candy for the season, and he's got an assertive presence that makes you want to pay attention to him, and his melanin's just gorgeous, and he's kind of stands out. I'm sorry, he's a very dark, beautiful color. I'm just saying, and he like stands out in a way that, like, you want to look at him when he's on screen. I'm sorry. You want to look at him when he's on screen, and I think that that's why they brought him back, as opposed to the fact that he's actually a player. I'm going to ignore you for just 1 second. He's actually a player that means anything to the game, aside from being somebody that you want to look at. And thank you so much for laughing. I really appreciate that. I'm serious. The color of his skin is
no, you don't. I believe you. Like, yes, his melanin is amazing. Yes. I've never heard melanin described that way, but fine. His melanin is top tier melanin. In James Clement, yes, I agree. I agree with you. Another returnee, and I talked about this on my Guatemala recap last week. Is Stephanie. And I feel, and this is kind of a brief thing, I'm not going to ask anyone to attest to it, but there are moments in the season where they kind of bury her Guatemala appearance, where she was clearly the villain in that season, and they only harp on her performance in Palau, even to the point where James says, Stephanie is known as someone to be on a tribe where they lost every single challenge. And that is her storyline going to her being voted out. And the episodes that she gets voted out. And once again, it's just kind of like Guatemala is a weird season to try to bury, considering they've brought back people from Thailand, and that's my Thailand reference for the episode. They have brought back people from Thailand, and they choose to bury Guatemala beneath almost every other season. I feel like Island of the Idols might take its spot now because of, so that was just weird to me. Anyway, as the season progresses, the heroes are losing, and we come to the sumo challenge. And the sumo challenge is probably my favorite challenge of this season. One, because the heroes, who is not, like, I don't like the heroes tribe this season, but I am rooting for them in this episode because it's like, all right, let's get them a win. So because of their dominance in the challenge, and because of the semi memes that come from this challenge, one, Coach thinking he's won his portion of the challenge and does his whole Dragon Slayer move, and Jeff's like no, and then he flips off Jeff even though they're buddy. The fact that James once again comes off as a dick by throwing his thing at Randy, who's an old ass man, and James, is trying to show off at the fact that he just beat Randy in a sumo challenge. And I have in my notes, but because I had forgotten Tyson's confessional right after I wrote this, but it looks like the men on the Heroes tribe have testosterone overload, and Tyson gives a confessional right afterwards where he says, "It seems like the Heroes took steroid sandwiches." I think that is a very good analogy of the intensity that the Heroes were playing with in that challenge. Now, sadly to say, it doesn't help the Heroes the next few episodes because they end up losing right afterwards. And we get to the first big storyline of the season, and we'll go with Rose for this. Russell versus Boston Rob on the Villains Tribe. Now, going into the season, if I had to pick, I would have been a Boston Rob fan. I guess I would say that I am a Boston Rob fan, depending on the season that he's on, as compared to Russell, where I'm never a fan on any season that he's on. So I was a big Boston Rob person in this situation. What was your opinion on this power struggle? And obviously Russell wins in the end as far as who makes it farther. But do you think that the villains that sided with Russell in this situation make the right move for themselves?
That's an interesting question because it's like, well, when the season started and Rob was the one who's basically taking charge of trying to get the camp set up, and no one else wanted to do anything, and Russell was pouting about it, like why aren't people paying attention to me? Basically,
Yeah.
That's how it came off anyway. But it's very interesting to me that people would side with Russell over Rob. And as someone who's still fairly new to, still pretty new to Survivor and still pretty new to Orgs also, like it's something that I don't really understand. It's something that, like, okay, if someone is taking charge at a camp and being very visible and obviously caring a lot about the well-being of the tribe, it's something that I don't fully understand why people would side with Russell over Rob. So I don't know if I'm the right person to ask for this question, but
No. I honestly just want your opinion. Jeremy, Mac?
Jeremy's a little occupied, so I mean, it is a bit difficult only because people would know Rob a lot more.
That is a hot take, but we'll...
Yeah. Rob's
that is a hot take, but fine. Whatever.
Oh,
Survivor.
I honestly would agree with that take because I'm not a Boston Rob fan, but
Watching the season, I was a bit of a Rob fan only because I was a 10-year-old child and I saw, the leader taking charge and whatnot and all that. I'm like, ooh, good person. Not anymore. And then you have Russell who's like, fangs out, claws out, running around, doing their thing. So it is a little toss up.
And I've said this before on, I think the last time I talked about Boston Rob was All Stars, which I said in seasons where Boston Rob doesn't have full control over everything going on, those are usually the seasons that I like. And he's played 5 times. So Marquesas, Heroes versus Villains, and Winners at War are the 3 times that I like Boston Rob because he's just good enough where I know there is a point where he's going to go and I don't have to learn to hate him. All Stars and Redemption Island are the 2 exceptions in that case. So the reason I like Boston Rob in this season is because he's going against Russell, who I'm fresh off of not liking in Samoa. He's aligning with people that I enjoy, with Courtney, Sandra, and that whole crew, as compared to Russell, who, not to say I don't like Danielle or Parvati, because I do enjoy them, but it's like, in this situation, I'm definitely pulling for the Courtney, Sandra crew. And for it to turn out where Tyson votes himself out of the game, and Coach and Jerry basically flip on Rob, even though Coach doesn't technically vote for Rob, and Rob goes, it kind of sucked watching his downfall in this situation, because it's not one of the seasons where I'm rooting for him to lose. It's one of the seasons where I'm like, I hope that he actually does relatively well. And the fact that he doesn't, and that Russell does do well, always leaves not a bad taste because of how the season ends up, but it's always like, oh damn, yeah, now he has full control and he's gonna try to target Courtney and Sandra and all the stuff that happens at the merge. But I do feel like to me, use a Lost reference, Boston Rob was the sacrifice that this season needed in order for it to pay off in the end. I feel like if Boston Rob stays, Sandra probably doesn't win at the end. Someone else does. I don't know who, but someone else does. Boston Rob was the sacrifice that was needed for Sandra to eventually win in the end. So I understand that people are not, Boston Rob guys or girls or theirs, but Boston Rob is fine for the most part.
I would say contrasted against Russell Hantz, Boston Rob.
Yeah, Boston Rob's gone.
Normally in most other seasons is like, I don't know, pretty unlikable and controlling and weird. Contrasted against Russell, he's like the most reasonable, funny, nice person on the planet. But that's where I think, like, from a viewer perspective, you're getting that. And you're wanting Rob and his side to, like, continue forward and Russell's side to fail, even though, like, I'm a Parvati stan, you know what I mean? Not necessarily Danielle, but definitely Parvati. I think in the game, like, even if it's not the right game move, Russell made more promises. He was able to deliver more on those promises, even if by the end he was cutting Danielle. He was having plans to cut Parvati or whatever. Rob, I feel like, just didn't do what he needed to do, even if it was strategically a better move for the long term, like, wasn't doing what he needed to do in the moment to preserve himself. Whereas going with Russell might have felt like the right move, because
everybody you gotta swallow your pride in that situation. And that's something that, it's not even an alpha male thing, because I know plenty of other folks that are not males that would have a hard time swallowing their pride in that situation, where it's like, you've been going head to head with this person for the last couple of rounds, and all of a sudden this person probably has control, and instead of just saying, hey, you know what, let's do what you want to do, they decide, we're going to go out against each other, and whoever comes out on top wins. So I can't say that I disagree with Rob in this situation, because sometimes testosterone is a hell of a drug. And I feel like, especially on this season, it very much is. This is kind of a note that has nothing to do with anything. We don't have to talk about it much. Once again, Cirie, there are nefarious means to get Cirie out of the game, which sucks, because in Panama, she's fired out. In Micronesia, she's Amanda Kemmeled out. And in this season, she's idled out. And it's still not as bad as being defaulted out in Game Changers.
Which, might I add, like, she is the name of that move. When you get defaulted out.
When you get Cirie out.
Yeah.
And I will say, with this season, one, I feel like that was the best way to get Cirie out of the game. But two, a lot of the shit that the heroes do after Cirie is gone would not have gone down if she were still there. If JT comes to her and says, hey, you know what? I think it'd be a great idea to give this J-Brone that we know nothing about the idol, because it kind of looks like Parvati has an all-women's alliance over here. I feel like Cirie would have been like, yeah, fuck that. We're still going to keep that here, and we'll deal with that when we get to the merge. We're not going to try to say this guy clearly is one of the villains for some reason, because we've never seen his season, which means it could have only happened within the last month, which means he took somebody's spot that was probably already going to be on this season, and all of a sudden he's here. Do we really want to jeopardize what we have, the momentum that we have right now going to the merge, to help out someone based off of a perception that we have from season 16? Fuck you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, and it's ironic because in a little while I'm going to sit here and defend JT's move to do that. But
You will fail.
if Cirie was there, I don't feel like a lot of the stuff that the heroes pull after she goes until the very end happens. So Cirie goes. And where do we want to go with this? After Rob goes, I believe I didn't write down exactly where it happens. Russell proposes a final three to Jerry and no, he proposes a final three to Jerry and
Coach.
and Coach, yeah, and Jerry and Coach. And I feel like even in that final three, he loses, which leads me to my next topic of discussion: the perceived goats that happen in Survivor, Big Brother, and in the org community, where people love throwing around the word goat, which is something that I don't believe in because you're only a goat when you actually lose to the person that you're supposed to lose against. So in this situation, in this season, I feel like Russell is probably a goat for a lot of people very early on in the season because of how he's coming off. I'll go to Jeremy Mack for this one first. First of all, do y'all believe in the perception of goats? But also, do you feel like there is a situation in this season, a final three in the season, where Russell potentially wins? And you could put anybody against them. Like you can pick any heroes or villains and put them at the end. I would prefer if you did it for people that made the merge, but there's there a final three where Russell wins this season, but also goats.
Maybe, but like I doubt it. I could see him maybe winning if he was sitting next to like Coach and Tyson. Maybe, but even then, probably not. I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. Go, you talk.
In terms of like,
Well, yeah, even if you don't want to answer the first part, the other part of the question, your perception of goats. Do you feel like this perception is an actuality, or is this something that people make up in a game so that people feel less about themselves?
I feel like when it comes to like the word goat, it's like someone who's like destined to lose. But sometimes people use that to advantage, and I use that to my advantage to win a Survivor game. I was up against people who were more in power with me. I got all the information out of them, and in the end game, I took them all out, and then I won because of that. So to say like you're a goat, it's such a broad term that anyone can be like given that, and if perception is reality, it can hurt them in the jury, it can hurt them in the final trial council, but like that's not set in stone.
It depends on how you argue your game.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can be perceived as a GOAT, but you can also manage that perception, and it's all about how you argue your case to the jury in the final tribal, and like how you manage that perception when they're leaving.
Yeah, I would say I agree. I want to go to Zoe and Rose. Same questions to both of you, but more on the goat topic. Do you believe that there is a such thing as an actual goat, or do you think that anyone that is perceived as a goat could potentially still win a game? Either one of you can go first.
I definitely think a person who's perceived as a goat could win, because I just saw it happen. Like the aforementioned villain that I talked about in the org I just finished. She like there came a point in the jury chat when we were talking about her, and we said she's, there's no way she's leaving the game now. There's no way she's joining the jury, because they keep bringing her along because they perceive her as someone who can't win. And even the jury was thinking that at the time. But at the same time, she she presented her case in a way that made us realize, no, she's definitely not a goat. She was making these moves, and I think having this perception of people being a goat, that could definitely hurt your own game, because the people who brought her to the final tribal council, they definitely had this idea of her being a goat, and that's what ended up losing them the whole game. I think there was a sense of overconfidence that caused them not to make as much effort in their final pleas. And I definitely think that hurts. And it happened with Sandra. Russell thought she had zero chance of winning, and look what happened. So
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought it up, so I don't have to bring it up again. The prime example of goats not really being, and this is why I don't believe in goats. I think Sandra might be the reason I don't believe in goats, or maybe Natalie White. It's the fact that if you're sitting there thinking, "Oh yeah, there's no way I'm going to lose against this person," and then that person potentially outperforms you, but also knows how to appeal to the jury. This is why I don't believe in robbed players at Final Tribal, because when you're there, you're there.
You have the shot.
If the jury's pissed at you, it's your job to make sure they're not pissed at you in that moment. Period. It doesn't matter what happened beforehand. If you give them the answers that they want, there is always a potential of swaying someone over. So Sandra is one of those players where it's like, yeah, do I think that Parvati, like going in, did I think that Parvati was going to win? Yeah, probably. But I feel like Sandra gave the jury the answers they were looking for. I think that she came off as less arrogant in most parts. Like she came off as, yep, this is exactly how I did it. If you don't like it, fuck you. But it was more not arrogant. What's the other word? Owning up to, like, yes, this is what I did. If you want to perceive it as me riding coattails, screw you. I did what I had to do to get to the end. So that's once again, I don't believe in this is goat perception, because there have been many times throughout this history of just Survivor, if we don't talk about orgs or Big Brother, where goats have won the game because they know how to play the game when it really matters, and that's at the end of the game. Zoe.
Yeah, well, and I mean that leads to my point, is that I do believe goats exist, and that there's almost like a goat scale. You know what I mean? Like from like not a goat at all to like I didn't show up except to participate the bare minimum in challenges, made no moves, made no friends. Like I don't know. And I definitely think that those people are in existence, but they have the ability to move on the goat scale and to become a better player than they were originally perceived as. And if somebody goes in with full confidence that they're going to win, and they start cursing the other person out or showing their true colors or whatever it is that they're going to do, even if they played a good game, like, there is the chance that somebody just doesn't respect that, or a group of people doesn't respect that. And suddenly that goat scale is like on a totally other level of like, maybe because I was kind to people, I now have a chance of winning, as opposed to I played the best game and I deserve to win.
Yes.
So, like, yeah, I think that the concept of a goat is real, and you can intend to take a goat to finale with the intent to win against them, but that doesn't mean that you're going to. So yes, the goat can exist as a figure in the game, but that does not determine their winning status at all.
Yes. I mean, spoiler alert, look at season 42. That final three is a prime example of like goat to reverse goat just based off of final tribal council.
I 100% agree with that. Like, and I was rooting from her from the very beginning, because I was like, she's likable, she's funny, she's smart.
Just in case you missed it.
But like,
Canadian.
I'm sure she got a pretty good edit because she's the winner, but they were all seeing those things too, clearly, and they just chose not to believe that she would win because they had such confidence in themselves. So, like I said, a goat can exist in the minds of every individual player. Like, sure, Marianne might have been a goat to everybody that brought her there, but she won, so it doesn't matter. A goat doesn't mean you can't win.
Perception is reality, but perception is also pliable.
And also, perception or reality is a reality, according to Eric Cardona, the greatest juror of all time. I knew that this was going to be the longest episode that we've done so far, and it has already, because we are just hitting the merge. But once again, thank you all, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, everyone that's here. Moving on. One thing that I want to get to before we hit the merge, and once again, y'all don't have to say anything behind this. This is just more of a I hate people on Reddit. Sandra doesn't do anything, and she just wins. Well, first of all, she's won twice, so, like, fuck you. But two, in this season, when it's her and Courtney's backs against the wall after Boston Rob goes out, she tells Russell, because she knows this fucker's very paranoid and will believe anything that I say, Coach wants to vote you out. And Russell's like, well, then he's gone. That's all I need to hear. He's gone. And they vote out Coach. Coach is the first juror. Courtney goes next. Sandra goes to the end. There are also moments during the merge where Sandra continues, and this is the storyline. This is her storyline for the entire merge is, I'm trying to do this, but you people won't listen to me. You know, whether you are Candace, who's the consummate flipper, whether you're Pout-Face McGee and Amanda Kemmel, whether you're Colby, who just seemed very checked out at this point, or if you're holier-than-thou Rupert, none of y'all are believing anything that I am saying in this moment, and I promise you, if you just listen to me, I honestly, I feel like if the heroes listen to Sandra, Sandra probably doesn't win the season because she doesn't make it to the final three. I think it's a benefit to her game that these fuckers decide not to listen to her in the moment, because now all of them are on the jury and will vote for her. But the people that say Sandra doesn't do anything, I can give you examples from Pearl Islands and Heroes vs. Villains. Hit me up in my DMs and I'll give you all the examples. Getting past that, the JT thing. So I did an episode on the pod about a year ago where I defended JT as saying this is not the worst move that's ever happened because of his perception of everything that's going on in the game. Him not seeing Samoa and him having seen Micronesia. You make things up in your head. Before I get to reiterating what I said then, we'll start with Rose. Good move, bad move on JT's part, based off of just based off of JT in this season.
Well, obviously, we know it's a bad move because it's Russell. You know, I mean, it's very easy. It's very easy to sit here and say that was the stupidest move ever. You never, like Russell said, you never give a villain the idol. But if JT's read had been correct, I feel like that could be a good move. Like in another universe where his read had been correct, and maybe in another universe where instead of Russell, it was Rob or someone else. Maybe it could have been a good move. But the fact is that, you know, the heroes, they were still very much separated, and they didn't know, they weren't certain that merge was coming up. They suspected it, but they didn't know. And the fact that they were giving an idol to the other tribe just doesn't seem very smart to me, because why would you do that when you don't know the full story? Why would you look at this and say, I think this is what's going on, but maybe, you know, and so let's act based on what we perceive. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me. I feel like the pieces for a brilliant move are there, but I feel like the timing was wrong. Obviously the person was wrong, which we know, but to be fair, he didn't know that. And, you know, I don't know, like in another universe, it could have been brilliant, but as it is, obviously it definitely didn't pay off for him.
Jeremy Mack.
Okay.
That was very cute right there.
I feel like
I'm trying really hard to think about it objectively.
No.
It doesn't feel all that different in my mind to what Taj and question mark did on Token Teens at Exile Island.
Brendan.
Yes, where they were like sharing idol clues or like idols or whatever between their tribes.
Yeah.
But they had the opportunity to talk for an entire day, and so they knew what the situation was on either side, and so they like had the context to go with the picture and knew how to use that effectively. Whereas I feel like JT was just trying to like blow smoke in the wind and hope that it worked. And even the letter, like Russell and Parv are sitting there reading it, and like I would be pissing myself laughing if I was sitting on Survivor and somebody gave me that letter, because you just sound like a fucking moron. Because there's no part, like the girls are coming after you and you have to protect yourself with this idol. You have to play it tonight or you're going home. And I'm like, dear Lord, sir.
Like, I mean, if you find, I mean, I guess didn't like the tribe kind of find the idol or the idol clue kind of together?
They found the idol clue together. JT finds it.
Fell out or
Yeah. And then JT's like, I think I'm going to give it to Russell because it looks like there's an all women's alliance on the other side.
And I just want to say that means.
Hold on, Matt. Let Matt finish.
Sorry, I'll just say, I'll take the idol and be like, oh my god, it fell in the ocean. Shit. Like, don't give your idol to someone you don't know. Like, I understand they're trying to like weaken the supposed girls alliance because of, you know, Micronesia and all that, but I just don't see how it worked out. If I feel like another thing that kind of screwed over the heroes is no swap as well, but it is still a very good moment, and one of my favorite moments is Parvati and Russell on the beach, and Parvati is like cackling like a little witch and like
XOXO.
Yeah, like it's part of the reason why I'm a big Parvati fan, just like being a little evil demon, but doing it so flawlessly, or you know, doing it so entertaining.
I also will, I'm the first person to say JT's dumb, but I will also defend him in that, like, there's the whole story of him seeing Russell in the airport on their way, and he saw Russell carrying a Bible, so he thought that Russell was like a good Christian man and that he could trust him because they were allowed one personal item. That's what Russell chose to bring because he wanted that impression for people. So like, I can see him also thinking that, but it still gives like Hicktown dumbass to me.
And I'll say, like, I feel like it's kind of a move rooted in a little bit of misogyny. Of like, oh my god, so scared of a woman's alliance. Like, oh, these scary, scary women are controlling everything, and that's the worst possible thing for me. Like, it'd still be 5 against 5. Like, and especially because, like, and I don't really think it's like the Taj Brandon thing, because Taj Brandon had a relationship. They knew each other. Taj had this perception of Brandon, whatever. I'm focusing on Taj because she goes further, but like
his name's Brendan.
Whatever. Okay, that's
I'm
how relevant he is to me. But like that Taj, like they had the relationship to back up the whatever moves that they made. Whereas JT was like, I see a man that I must save. He will be loyal to me. Damn it. Whereas he could have saved that idol until Merge, used it correctly, and then they would have had the numbers.
Yes. And so this is where I'll go with this. Because, I mean, is there misogyny involved? Yes, probably. Is there... And this is how I would feel in this season. If I were playing in this season, and my perception is, I just watched Parvati win in Micronesia 4 seasons ago, where she had this all-women's alliance. I'm not afraid of all-women's alliances in any other season, but I am afraid when she's the one involved and there are 2 people from her alliance also on the same season that we are on currently. And so this is why I will, I guess, play devil's advocate with JT, but also kind of defend JT as far as optics aren't great. If you don't know who Russell is, and you know who Parvati is, and you see all the men going home, it's almost like, what if she's doing this again? But even then, I will give total credit to Zoe with this is, keep the idol to yourself, and when we merge, you make your decision based off of the conversations that you're having in that moment. Because right now, all you're going off is based off of your intuition, which, cool, whatever. You won a game before, so we can't shit totally on your intuition. But this is a new game. You can't use your intuition for something that you have no idea about. This is going on a totally different part of the island. So for all you know, it's Russell and Parvati running the show, and it's not an all-women's alliance, and they're trying to play you as a country bumpkin, which Cindy sat here on Token Jeans and tried to prove a point with that JT is actually just a bumpkin. I don't believe that, but this doesn't help his cause because he tries to stick with his good old boy and Russell, and it ends up costing him the game. And the worst part of it all is they merge. They assume that they assume that Russell plays an idol and idles out Courtney, which is a weird hill to die on because I feel like if Russell's going to play the idol, he's probably going to play it on the person that he thinks is running the show, which would be Parvati. But JT and Colby specifically, because Rupert, I can't believe I'm getting credit to Rupert right here. Rupert doesn't believe that this is actually how it went down. Sandra's telling everyone this isn't how it actually went down. And JT's like, I don't believe that Parvati would still be here if this, that, and the other had happened. I'm like, he deserves to go because why would Sandra lie about this? I understand that Sandra could lie about things. Sandra's not lying to you. Huh?
How would that help her in this scenario? Like, why would lying about this help her in any way unless she's like, hey, I'm fucked and the numbers aren't there and they're all together. So like help maybe?
Yes. So and in that moment, I couldn't believe about 6-7 hours ago, I can't believe I'm trusting Rupert in this moment to convince these two jabronis that Sandra is telling the truth and that it's not Parvati running the show. It is Russell and Parvati running the show. And JT's like, I just don't believe it. And JT gets his ass sent home, and then it's game over for the heroes basically after that. So Zoe, this Final 10 Tribal Council is very historic. It's the double idol play. In the grand scheme of Survivor, first question before I get to my second question, is this top 3 for you as far as idol plays? This is just a kind of a yes or no. You can give an explanation, but
I think that my answer is going to be clear with my next question. Who plays an idol and then who goes home?
Okay, Parvati plays double idol on Sandra and Jerry, and then JT goes home.
Okay, yeah. No.
It's not top 3?
No, I barely remember.
Okay.
Like, I think that this pre-merge is so spectacular in terms of gameplay that even this fucking double idol play, like, who is she? I don't know. No, I'm probably wrong in this assessment, but
Mac has a counterpoint.
As someone who is obsessed with Parvati, this is an example of like one of those like fun, flashy yet strategic moves that I feel like Jeff Probst is just like obsessed with. I mean,
but also shows like not only is like flashy and fun, but like shows her social awareness and strategic ability. And like,
Amanda is lying to her.
Yeah, like she knows that Amanda's lying to her, so she plays the idols on the wrong people intentionally, knowing that one of them is going to be the one getting votes, not her. And like she's so aware of the game and so smart, and I love to see it. And when she whips them out and she's like, this one's for you and this one's for you, and pissing off Russell and seeing his face when she's like, I gave you one of those idols.
I'm just trying to increase my odds for this of the villains, you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll say I
That's
do
true.
remember it. It needed to be triggered. I do remember it. It's a great moment. But it is a little
Wait, isn't that the iconic, like, you know what, Jeff? You know, like,
Yes. Which is crazy because Kelly Wentworth does it again. Like she also says,
Yeah.
"You know what, Jeff?"
Yeah.
11 seasons later.
Mhm.
You know what, Jack?
You know what, Jeff?
I had that as a soundbite for ages.
As you should.
Like, I might, after this, actually make that my ringtone.
You know what, Jeff?
You know what, Jeff?
Well, and that is a testament to Parvati's game. I'm going to ask everyone at the end of the episode, so just keep this in mind. I'm going to ask who do you think should have won between the two of them, if we don't count Russell. I think that is a testament to her game, is the fact that she was able to read the room, tell that Amanda was lying to her, and realize, hey, if I play these two idols on the other two people in this alliance, Russell, they're not going to vote for Russell because he's a guy and also they trust him. They're not going to vote for me because they think that I have an idol. She's smart enough to realize these are the two people that should do it on, and it works. And I think that is a testament to her strategic and social game, because she can read the room, unlike her number one ally, Russell, who can't read the room and tell that people, are doing these nefarious things. But this is also the first or second time. I want to say it's the first time that Russell is caught with his pants down in his alliance with Parvati. And I believe there are 3 moments this season where Parvati does things that she doesn't fill Russell in on, and Russell throws a hissy fit about it afterwards. And this is why I compare Russell to Rupert, because both of them get overly pissed off when things don't go their way. It's just that Survivor has programmed us to like Rupert and not like Russell. Yes, we're all drones being programmed by Survivor production. I think that this is the moment where Russell loses. I feel like in this moment, because of how he's already done things so far, no matter who he sits next to, if he sits next to Parvati, he loses. If he sits next to Jerry or Sandra, they're looked at as being better social players, so he loses. If he sits next to any of the heroes, obviously he loses. Danielle, that's where it gets tricky, because if I still feel like Danielle would lose, but she wouldn't come third. I think she would lose to whoever comes in first. That's not Russell. I feel like at the merge is where Russell inevitably loses the game. And that's why I asked you guys at the beginning of the show, do you think there is a situation this season where Russell wins? And I honestly don't see a way out for him because of how he's being perceived socially by everyone. But we get the Parvati double idol play. It's epic, whatever. And what happens the very next episode for all my Cook Islands fans? Candace flips. Rose. In a situation where you're 5-4 down, but you feel like there is still a chance for you and your 4, just you, would you flip and make yourself 6th, or would you stick with 4?
I mean, I feel like me flipping at that point would definitely kind of cement my loss because, at that point, the people that I'm joining know I'm just a flipper, and so they would never trust me with anything, basically. And the people that I flipped against, they'll obviously never trust me again. So I feel like just flipping in that situation wouldn't be the way to go about it. Like, I would try to convince one of them to flip for whatever reason. But, just me by myself going over to the other team, like, hey, please keep me safe. Definitely not the way to go in this case. You lose respect from everyone if you do that.
It might as well not happen.
Yeah, I'm not a Candace fan, for everyone that has watched up to this point. I'm not a Candace fan, 1, because she flips on I2, and 2, because I already knew what happens in this season when she flips on the heroes. And every time I watch the season, so I was like, yep, this is where Candace flips because she's a hero for some reason. I understand the strategy behind both flips that she has. I get it. As a non-biased party, I get it. But also, she has to know that in that moment, the perception is to both groups, we probably shouldn't take her to the end. And what happens the very next episode, she gets voted out. Right after she flips, the villains, at least the majority of the villains, don't protect her, and the heroes have a vendetta, so they get her ass out. And it's funny because Russell, once again, what did you guys do? Like, why'd you guys leave me out of it? He's getting butthurt once. It's another one of these moments where Parvati keeps him out of the loop, and he gets butthurt about it and starts attacking. And this time when he attacks, he's able to actually get Danielle out of the game. But it's just adding to this whole, he doesn't know how to deal with people. And that is I feel like that's not a hot take to say that's why Russell isn't as good at the game as he could be, because he is very good at the game. It's just, he's not good with dealing with people. He doesn't know how to lose well. He doesn't know how to be a loser in certain situations. And there are 3 times this season where Parvati leaves him out of things, and he just totally freaks out, and he goes off on people. And I feel like in a different situation, in a Tony situation, he probably doesn't get looked at as a crybaby or whatever he's being perceived as in that moment. So they vote out Danielle and the flipper, whose name are Candace, in the same episode. And the best part of that episode is the reward visit, where her, Amanda, and Colby go on the reward visit to the author of Treasure Island's house,
Robert Louis Stevenson.
Yeah, Robert Louis Stevenson, and they're watching Treasure Island. I keep wanting to call it Treasure Planet. Danielle finds the idol clue. Amanda and her have the fight, and Colby has the epic line of, "I was just watching Treasure Island. I don't really care," because Colby is very much checked out.
Island.
I was just watching Treasure Island. But I really felt for Danielle in this episode and her boot, because first of all, once again, King Russell, who he keeps referring to himself as King Russell in this season, even though he hasn't done shit besides find a few idols in his first season and played one of them correctly in his first season, one of them correctly this season. King Russell is he's assuming that Parvati and Danielle are that close, which they are, and he tries to turn them against each other and tells them both, do not tell the other person that we talked, and then gets upset at the fact that they talked to each other. Like, how did you not think that was going to happen? If I'm me, and I think that Rose and Zoe are very close, and my perception is they are close, I probably shouldn't tell the other that we should vote out the other person. The worst thing I could do is tell Rose, let's vote out Zoe, and then tell Rose, do not tell her that I said that. That's just, if the perception is already there that they're close, why would you tell them in the event that they are actually close to not tell the other person? I don't get Russell Hantz fans. This is the entire point of this. I don't get Russell Hantz fans. I get Russell Hantz. I do. I don't get his fans that think that, oh yeah, he's flawless. It's like, well, he's not. He's not. Anyone can speak. Anyone can speak. No.
I just want to talk about flipping for a second. I think flipping is fun to do when you trick the other people into thinking that you're going to flip, but actually having a plan with your group.
Yeah.
I am the king of like doing an underdog shit where I'm like down 5-3 or something, and I'll like convince them that I'm gonna flip, but actually convince one of them to like play a thing and do something or like swing. And it's so much fun to create the chaos when you're on the bottom. And the worst thing that can happen is you go home and you're already on the bottom, so that's likely anyways. So like, why not go out swinging rather than just like accept 6th place?
And I'll say like another thing about like the Tony versus Russell is that as much as like I hate to say it, like Tony's a cop, he's got a good read on people. He understands fundamentally like how people respond in certain situations.
Yeah.
And Russell is just lacking that information, that emotional intuitiveness of like, this is how somebody will react when I say this to them. And Tony had that. And like, Tony was a good social player. Yeah, probably not one of the best. And his strategy game, like, it was just a compliment to his strategy game. Whereas Russell, like, just completely lacks real human relationships in either of the seasons that he plays. And the women that attach themselves to him do so as a smart decision to get themselves
Yes.
like, and that Natalie might is so looked down upon, like in this season. Parv's not looked down upon, obviously, but like, you know, the decision to go with Russell is somewhat questionable until you realize the motivations for doing so. Whereas people went with Tony because they trusted him, they liked him. He was charming, he was funny, he was smart, he could get you far and be your friend. Whereas Russell was gonna be a dick to you, but you would end up at the end.
Yes, I agree, and I will say that as we've said many times throughout this, once again, I think that Russell's probably top 10 players, period.
Strategically,
yes. But when he sits there at the reunion and says that luck and the social game basically don't matter, that's what basically keeps him. And that's why I always have Cirie ahead of him as far as players to never win being the best. Cirie is always going to be because Cirie actually understands the social game, and in reality, because of twists or other things, has never gotten the chance to sit at the end. We know what Russell does at the end because we've seen it twice. We've never seen Cirie at the end, so we can't sit there and say that she's a bad player because the 4 times she's played, she's been, for lack of a better phrase, screwed, even though I don't believe in screwed. But she's never been able to sit there and try to prove her case. Whether might as well Russell said at the end twice, and in one of those situations probably should have won, but didn't because of the way he treated folk and how he read the room. Moving on, and I swear to everyone, we will be out of here before the 2-hour mark. Once again, I knew this would be the longest episode. This is why I wanted to panel. Rupert and Colby make a final 3 with Russell during the final 6, the family visit, because Russell once again gets in his feelings that he's not picked to go on the family visit with Jerry, Parvati, and Sandra. And Russell makes a deal with Colby and Rupert. Rupert, who he just sat there and antagonized the last couple of episodes, he decides, we make a final 3. In that moment, I feel like Russell probably believed it. Let's vote out Parvati and see what happens. But in that moment, I feel like Colby wins. Of Colby, Rupert, and Russell, I feel like Colby wins in that situation just because I feel like people would think that Rupert was holier than thou, which he is, and that Russell was Russell. I think that the better move for Russell in that situation, which is what he inevitably does because Parvati wins immunity, is stick with his villains. Because you don't want to take a hero to the end. And he says that a lot. You don't want to take a hero to the end because they will win. Period. And inevitably what happens is they take a villain to the end that has been trying to work with the heroes, which works well enough for her to win the game in the end. The Fake Idol by Rupert. Anyone can talk to this. I thought it was probably Rupert's best move through 3 seasons so far. And I'll tell y'all, the Rupert fatigue hit very early this season, even though I haven't watched the Rupert season in 2 weeks, I guess, at this point. The Rupert fatigue hit very early this season, but I enjoyed this move. So anyone can talk about this. The rock that he puts in his pants to pretend to be an idol. Do you think, not necessarily that if it was a smart move, do you think that people could still get away with that now?
Yeah.
Maybe if you did it differently somehow.
I mean, I feel like you would need to make a fake idol at this point.
Yeah. I don't know if. I mean, it could. If you have, it depends on the people that are there. If they're very paranoid, then they see this like the lump in the pocket and be like, "Oh no, it's an idol!" Like, and then you can have like people like us who will look at that and be like, "That's fake." It all depends.
Honestly, I don't know if it would work these days because if you're hiding an idol in your front right pocket or whatever, I'm sorry, you just don't have an idol. Put it in your sock, for God's sake. In your crotch.
Actually hide it.
Yeah.
I remember Tyson.
If you're stupid enough at this point to be putting an idol in your front pocket, you probably couldn't have found it. Unless
I remember Tyson hiding one in his underwear in blood versus water, and then joking about like, "Oh, my wife won't like notice the difference or whatever." Like, there's so many different places to put it. Like, an idol of the idol, someone put it like in the hair, which was like, or like an idol, something similar to that in the hair.
Like put it in your. If you're in a really sticky situation, put it in your buff and carry your buff around.
Yeah,
But my thing is, if he's trying to protect himself in season 20, and the final 6, 3 of them have played games where their idols don't exist. So Jerry, Colby, and Rupert have never played in a game where idols exist. I do think it is smart on Rupert's end to say, hey, if these people are, if this is what these players are programmed to look for, I'll just put it in my pocket. And I know that Russell's paranoid as shit all of the time. If he's looking right at my pocket, which Russell has a confessional where he says, I found a lot of idols in my day, and that looks like an idol in Rupert's pocket. I'm sorry if that made him sound more ignorant, but I don't disagree with the way that Rupert went about it, because he doesn't get voted out, and then there did cause a little bit of discourse where people thought that he potentially did have it. So anyway, Sandra once again goes to Rupert and says, I know you have this deal with Russell and Colby. Russell's not sticking with it. We should probably go after Russell. Rupert once again is just like, oh no. Rupert for the first time this season is like, oh no, I trust Russell. And Rupert gets his ass sent home, which I feel like clinches Sandra's vote in that situation, because once again, Sandra tries to save your ass, and you don't listen to her.
I really feel like Sandra's win here. Sorry to interrupt, but I feel like Sandra's win here is like a boat of missed opportunities, and everybody just goes, "Yeah, she was right." Like, and if somebody can say she was right about every single thing in this game, even if her predictions or her desires to vote people out didn't work, you could be like, no, but she was right, and I should have followed what she said, and she's smart enough to have known what was the right decision for me in that moment. And her resume is not actually based on the moves that she made, but the missed opportunities that people did not take that she had suggested.
I won an org with that literal gameplay. Like, I brought the 2 people that I had been telling everybody were going to win the season to the final 3 with me. And then I said, look at what you did. This is your fault.
And we will get to Rupert's final tribal speech in just a second, because Rupert basically just says everything that Zoe and Jeremy just said. Only other note for Final 6 is Sandra plays an idol at Final 6, his last round of play it. And in his infinite wisdom, Russell once again gets pissed off, even though it's not played correctly. They get back to camp, and Russell says that was a dumb move for you to play your idol when you didn't have to. And Parvati's like, didn't you play an idol this season that didn't need to be played? He's like, oh yeah, but I can admit that it was a dumb move, and it was a dumb move with Sandra, and y'all need to tell me when these things happen. And it's once again, it's 19 and 20. Even if you want to look at it as just like a casual, it is almost the why Russell loses 2 seasons storyline, because he, especially in this season where he's getting so defensive whenever people in his alliance do things that they don't include him in on, and instead of like taking it on the nose or like complaining about it in confessionals, complains about it in person to these people, knowing full well these people could either 1, end up on the jury, or 2, end up at final tribal and just drag you for being a paranoid piece of shit, which both things happen in this season. But him bitching about Sandra playing an idol, and Sandra's like, well, you never told me that the idols that you had, or you never told me that JT gave you that idol. You know, it's a testament to why Sandra is, in my opinion, a better overall player than Russell, because she can see that and act off of it. Strategically, yeah, fuck it. Yeah, Russell's fine. Better than Sandra. Whatever. I don't care about the strategic game. We get to Final Four. The challenge happens. Jerry gets sent home. Sandra burns Russell's hat, which is just amazing television.
So special.
Sandra telling Russell, I am against you. That happened in like Final 6, but I am against you. Like straight up saying, I'm not playing the role of coward. I am against you, and you're going to know this. I'm not going to try to hide. Everything about Sandra in the last 2 episodes, you know, when she inevitably wins, it's like, yep, you know what? She deserves it. And once again, at the end of the episode, I'll ask you how everyone feels about Sandra versus Parvati. So we get to Final Tribal Council. And very early on, we kind of realize that Russell's probably not going to win. It doesn't seem like people are bitter, but it seems like people are more in a Parvati versus Sandra camp instead of a Parvati versus Russell camp. Jeremy Mack will go with y'all first, because Russell has said that he feels like this jury was a tad bit bitter. Was this like based off of your own org performances and also the seasons of Survivor and Big Brother that you've watched? Did you perceive this jury as being overly pissed off and or bitter?
No. I mean, the most important thing in orgs is like how you talk to people and whether, you know, your relationship with them. And Russell just does not have. Does anyone like Russell in the season?
I mean, literally, look at the way that he talks to the people on the beach, though. Like, there's literally a clip we watched. We prepped for this by watching a 20-minute like cutscene of all of the big moments from this season. And Russell's literally sitting on the beach with somebody talking about who should go next, and he's like, "Yeah, one of them too." Sandra and Courtney are sitting right in front of him, and I'm like it's just like if somebody in an org treated people that way, they would be called out so quickly. And even just so much as to like, Andrew, when you went home in Redacted,
Great game,
I talked to you. I had a conversation with you, and I had your vote on lock because of that conversation once.
Yes,
Rose
you did.
left. So
Yes,
like,
you did.
it's not that hard.
It's how you talk to people. Like, yes,
It's how you treat people on the way. And I understand that the rivalries exist, and me and Jeremy had a decent rivalry in a game that we played together in. But we also had great social conversations to the point where I wanted to vote for them at the end of the game if they had made it, because I appreciated the way they treated me on the way out compared to others. That's no knock on y'all. I love you all. Rose.
Yes. I think like I definitely agree about the you know, treating people like just how I've played orgs. I've heard someone say that they weren't going to vote for me just because I checked in on them when they had COVID. you know, like, and it's not emotional manipulation. It's like being a genuine person, being, you know, like owning your game, but also caring about people as people. Like I actually heard someone say the moment when Russell lost was when he called Rupert a dumbass. Like I heard someone say that was the moment when he lost the game. Was because, you know,
sure.
it was unnecessary. You know, it was totally unnecessary. Like you can talk game with people, and I mean, Jeremy and I, we got into a little a little tiff during Redacted when we were, you know. But at the same time, we could turn around right afterwards and say, so how about that thing we talked about? You know, like it's there's like the way you treat people in these games is so important. It's so like it's not just about strategy. It's not just about winning immunity. Which, by the way, I put a little bit less value on winning immunity in Survivor than I do in Big Brother, because Big Brother comes with responsibility. Whereas, you know, Survivor, yes, you keep yourself safe, but you know.
Winning out is not an impressive game. Sorry.
I agree. Like Russell winning
Tune in
that
for our
last
season 30 episode of Worlds Apart.
yeah.
Zoe?
What was the question?
I'm also drunk, don't worry.
Okay. I think I know. What's the jury bitter? Is that the question?
Yes. Well, as compared to juries that you have faced, as well as juries that have happened in the show, was this jury actually better, or was it just, we don't like this person?
No, I think it was just like a common understanding that like there are multiple aspects to this game, and it doesn't matter how long you outwit or outplay, or you know, if you don't be kind. Like there was almost that just understanding that's like, we're not going to give the win to some dickhead. Like he's just some fucking guy, you know. Whereas these two like beautiful, strong women who played really hard, and like maybe they didn't make the insane moves that Russell made, but like treated people with respect most of the time. I mean, the hat burning, what he had it coming, but like I just on the jury, I wouldn't even consider voting for Russell. Like I'm not going to chew him out. I'm not going to be an asshole to him, but I'm not going to vote for him. And I think that that's totally valid of every person on the jury.
I do think people forget that the jury has the right to vote for whoever they want for whatever reason they want.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and yeah, like you can call them bitter, but it's like, you know, you're not there. You didn't experience it. So
Your perspective of the game is limited to your like view of what creates a good gameplay, but there are so many different, that's so objective that each person can say that this person's gameplay was superior to yours because of the way that I view the game. So like telling someone that their vote is wrong is so dumb to me.
Right. And I agree. And like my criteria for a win is that you have to not be a shitty person. And that's always going to be my criteria. Like if you get to the end and you were a total bitch the whole time, like I'm sorry, I'm not going to vote for you.
And there's shining examples of people who were villains in the season and did play villainous games to an extent, but weren't assholes.
You can be a villain and not an asshole. Absolutely.
And once again, one juror, they gave him the chance to try to explain and maybe redeem himself a little bit, and he didn't take that chance. No. So once he didn't take that chance, that further solidified him as not winning. You know.
And I will say this, and this is, I feel like this is a example of what everyone is saying. Game changers. Where Ozzy votes for Brad Culpepper because Ozzy respects the physical game. Brad Culpepper was the most dominant physical player in that season. I understood why Ozzy gave Brad Culpepper his vote at the end. Also, follow Ozzy on OnlyFans. We get to the end. Votes are read. Sandra beats Parvati. That's the best part of the episode. Raise your hand just based off of what you would vote for. Raise your hand if you would have voted for Parvati in the end. None of this. None of this. None of this. None of this. You either raise your hand or you don't.
I'll do it. I'll put my hand up.
I'll
Okay.
put my hand up.
Raise your hand if you would have voted for Sandra. There we go.
Also, yes, but
You can do that. And I feel like the reason that I ultimately would vote for Sandra at that point, one is because she already won, so it doesn't matter. But two, because she didn't. I feel like Parvati was really good at reading the room. I'm not going to sit here and say that she wasn't. I feel like if she had gone to the end with Danielle, if it was Danielle, her, and Sandra at the end, Parvati wins.
Because Danielle would have taken Sandra votes.
Yeah, Parvati would and Parvati didn't vote out Danielle, so it's not her fault that Danielle went home. I feel like because everyone, whether they perceived her as in control of the her and Russell alliance, or they perceived Russell as in charge of the her and Russell alliance, people perceived them as a duo. And because people didn't like him, people are not, especially if you're people that were against them, people are not going to want to vote for you because they see you as an offshoot of this person that we don't like. And not to the point where it was Natalie White and him, but to a point where like you were actually doing things and people are still looking at you as it's y'all together doing this. So, and I feel like Sandra, especially with the heroes, it was almost like the heroes, once Sandra says at the end, I went to all of you and tried to tell you that this fucker wasn't on the up and up, and it's your fault that he's here. I feel like the heroes in that moment respected the fact that, yeah, she was trying to help us. And yeah, one of us probably would have won if she had actually succeeded with it. I felt like they were to give it to her. But I would not have been pissed if Parvati had won the season, because I do feel like she was the one that was in control of her, Russell, Danielle, Jerry alliance, to the point where someone referred to Russell as her pet dragon. No, Parvati refers to Russell as her pet dragon,
Yes.
which was this amazing. I loved her final tribal performance, but I also understood the perception with the jury, especially the heroes, was Sandra was trying to help us, Parvati wasn't. Let's help out Sandra in the end because we couldn't during the game, and that's why I always give credit to Sandra for whether she read the room or not. It's fine. She read the room in that situation and realized I have Courtney's vote. I just need to give these heroes, and we're good to go. Small notes before we leave. We will definitely hit 2 hours. Small notes before we leave. One, if you've never watched the Heroes versus Villains Ponderosa, you should absolutely, tonight after you're done watching this or whenever you watch this, watch the Heroes versus Villains Ponderosa. They're all on YouTube. They're amazing. When Rupert's episode is the only one that sucks because he is bitter and he spends the time smoking cigarettes, which it sucks now in retrospect. Russell foreshadowing. So at one point, Russell says, "I want to burn Rob's hat." Parvati at Final Four. Parvati tells Russell, "I think we should vote out Sandra at Final Four instead of Jerry because Sandra will win." And Russell's like, "No, there's no way that Sandra wins." It's like, all right, once again, a testament to Parvati's perception of the game. She realizes that Sandra probably would win if she goes to the end, and she does. And is that it? Oh no, I mean, this is not really. We've talked about it enough. In my notes, I have this jabroni Russell keeps referring to himself as a king. Like what? And it's true. He has this perception. Mac, please.
Oh, this is not really. I mean, it's Survivor like because it's on Ponderosa. Doesn't some of the jurors form a band?
You're muted.
You're on mute.
You're muted.
The Dragons. It's Courtney, JT, and Coach. They form the Dragons because they have a Guitar Hero or rock band set at Ponderosa, and they actually released an album. But yes, they're called the Dragons. So if anyone hasn't watched the Ponderosa for Heroes versus Villains, by all means, please watch at least this one because it is amazing television. All the way, amazing YouTube, all the way around. It's great.
I definitely will.
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, the Rupert one, if you want to skip one, the Rupert one is fine because all it is him being ho-hum and smoking cigarettes. My rating for the season, to no surprise to anyone, is 5 out of 5. This is the first 5 I've given. The closest I've come to is Micronesia 4.75. Heroes versus Villains is Survivor. It is Survivor the movie, period. If Survivor had ended on this season, I would have been sad, but I would have understood because this is exactly how you go out with good conquering all. I love this season so much, and it sucks because starting tomorrow morning, I'm entering the dark ages of Survivor, starting off with Nicaragua, which I might start tonight, sadly. I don't know, depending on how long I stay up. But thank you all, the 4 of you especially, so much. Like I told you before we went live in the beginning of this, I was really looking forward to this panel and to talking about the season. I was so thankful that all of y'all said that y'all wanted to do this. By tomorrow night, I'll be halfway through this journey, which is just crazy. I need a life. I need to settle down. I need to find a life. In the meantime, I'm so thankful that y'all and everyone else has come on during this, and everyone's going to come on afterwards, and everyone's supported. I thank you all so much because I'm not doing this for views or money or anything because I'm getting at most 100 views with these. I'm not putting this in any of my Survivor audition videos. I don't advertise this on Reddit. It's just more because I enjoy the show. It's my comfort show. And I enjoy having friends like y'all that, will also come on and shoot the shit about the show. So I won't be this emotional after Nicaragua because I'll probably want to hate myself. But thank you all so much. And we will see you all after Survivor